about an evidence-based curriculum that promotes prevention education through social and emotional learning. And Debra Caputo joins us to discuss mental health first aid.
Well, mental health first aid is very important because it provides an opportunity for individuals to learn how to deal with a mental health crisis. Half of all of the youth have onset before age 14 of mental illness signs. In addition, 1 out of 5 individuals have had a mental health challenge or illness within the past given year. So those statistics really add to the fact that it's so important to have this training.
And we revisit the segment on the East End Gang Prevention Conference. Hello, I'm Art Flesher from Suffolk County Health Department's Division of Community Mental Hygiene. I'm your host for Something of Substance, our monthly video magazine. Welcome back. Each month we show how substance abuse, mental illness, and developmental delays affect you, your kids, and your community. We'll also give you a few examples of how services in Suffolk County help people find the inner resources they need to tackle their problems.
Before, addiction and depression kept me from living my life. And now, every step I take in recovery benefits everyone. There are many options that make the road to recovery more accessible. It begins with the first step. Join the Voices for Recovery.
Too Good for Drugs is an evidence-based curriculum developed by the Mendez Foundation. They develop and promote innovative prevention education through social and emotional learning. They have been developing programs for over 30 years. Family Service League in Bayshore recently offered a training of the Too Good curriculum for prevention specialists in our region.
Today's event came about when Lisa Kratzky, our prevention educator, went to Georgia to be trained as a trainer in the Mendez Too Good for Drugs.
The goal for Too Good for Drugs is to have the attendees learn better ways to deliver the program to their students. The hope today is to teach all of the attendees the correct way, a better way to get across the evidence-based programs to the students.
A lot of providers in Suffolk County and Nassau are using Too Good for Drugs, and they're not necessarily certified because that's not a requirement. When this opportunity came up for Lisa to be trained and then train others, we then wanted to benefit the region by having them also with the same training that she was able to have when she went down to Georgia.
So our goal for Too Good for Drugs is to get to the kids at a young age to educate them about the dangers of drugs and alcohol and to help them make right decisions, good decisions.
My background is in teaching. I actually have a master's in special education, and I love kids and I love helping kids. And after a while of looking for a teaching job, I decided to sort of go into a service type of position. And I was a parent advocate previous to this, and then I found the job at Family Service League, and it was teaching and working with children, and it's so fulfilling.
The Mendez Too Good for Drug curriculum is K through 5. And what's good about Too Good for Drugs is that it really works with the kids on self-esteem, peer pressure. It certainly talks about drugs and alcohol, but it talks about a lot of the things that lead children to make either bad or good decisions.
I think it's important that we get to the elementary age because once they get to 8th grade or 9th grade, they've really already made up their mind about drugs and alcohol and about the different decisions that they're going to make. So it's important to start early before these situations arise, so they know how to act in this situation and they're not kind of put on the spot putting the pieces together themselves.
2 of the components of our program are goal setting and decision making.
Goal setting and decision making are the first 2 lessons in each of the curriculums, and it's very important for children to set goals, to look to the future in a positive way. And so each of the lessons begin with a goal setting lesson where they get to set a short-term goal. They get to talk about the steps it takes to reach their goal and how to celebrate once they get to their goal. So important for children today for their self-confidence and for feeling good about themselves. And decision making helps kids kind of with their inner self to think about what the right thing to do is or the wrong thing to do. And we play a lot of games in the classroom to teach kids about decision making, just to get their minds working in different ways about what the right decision to make is.
It's important to have this kind of drug prevention training for kids in Suffolk County because the use is astronomical. Kids are having pill parties, kids are using heroin, kids don't think that pot is a drug, but they're smoking pot, they're drinking. A lot of their parents aren't really watching what's going on. So we need to let these kids know exactly what they're doing to their bodies and what the dangers are and why it's not good necessarily to follow peer pressure and to make negative decisions that could really affect them their whole lives.
Prevention is so important to me because I always have students come up to me and talk about how they themselves are affected by drugs and alcohol, or they may have a family member or someone they know that's affected by drugs and alcohol. So it's always nice to give them that education and that awareness piece that they can use later on. And then just for the kids themselves, we're always so used to saying no, you should be there. The fear factor or trying to scare them, but it's not really about that. It's about educating them and making them aware about it so they can make those healthy decisions for themselves.
Today's events coincide with Family Service League and what we're all about because it teaches the community that prevention is such a big part of what is necessary for successful youth in our community. The more prevention we can put out there and the more kids we can help, hopefully will help in the long run so that treatment isn't necessary. So we find that starting at a early age and getting into the schools and talking to the kids is a wonder in the big picture.
From the Too Good for Drugs and Too Good for Violence prevention training today, we've learned new techniques for interacting with the kids.
Today's seminar was great because we got a chance to actually meet and discuss the Too Good for Drugs program with other educators and facilitators and kind of bounce ideas off of each other in a better way of providing this material to our students.
I teach the Too Good for Drugs program, but it's always great to go to a training and learn from the other people there. And it's also nice to, I guess when you do the program, sometimes you do your own flair, you like work it in your own way, or you adapt it to your students, but it's always nice to see like exactly how it should be done, the exact verbatim language that should be used.
I'm hoping mostly that the attendees learn how to deliver the program better, have more comfortability with it when they're in the classroom, possibly learn new ways to deliver the program so that they can reach more students in their community and in their classrooms.
The training is important, I find, because it helps kind of bounce ideas off of other teachers and facilitators of the program in a constructive environment, in a roundtable discussion where we can get different ideas and different success stories of how the program works and how we can bring that back into our sites.
Well, Family Service League has been around since 1926. We're fairly well known throughout Suffolk County. Our prevention program and our treatment programs serve the people of Suffolk County, and what we realize is that if children at a young age learn to make good decisions, they might not need treatment when they become older. We're one agency, we can't be in every school, so we wanted to be able to have the other agencies who are in the other schools also have this up-to-date information so that they can provide the best training they can.
An evidence-based program is a program that has some criteria behind it. It's been used in other areas and other programs, and it actually is proven to help students with drug and alcohol use and things like that.
Evidence-based programs are actually preferred because we know from the beginning that this is a tried and true program. We know that the outcomes we're going to get are something that are reliable and valid.
We find that the younger we reach children, the less onset of using all of these different drugs is. When we reach kids at a younger age, we deal with a lot of kids 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. We're giving them the knowledge of the dangers of what's out there and maybe the consequences that they didn't know ahead of time. So we find that even when we speak to kids about decision making and about peer pressure, these are things that kids maybe didn't know about before, and so we're helping them with the words of what to use if they get into these situations.
It's important to reach these kids at a young age because they're being approached younger and younger with drugs, alcohol, peer pressure situations, starting at a very young age, unfortunately.
We'd like to thank Family Service League for hosting and Lisa Kratzky for educating us on the positive attributes that these curricula have to offer. For more information about upcoming Too Good for Drugs trainings, please contact the Suffolk County Prevention Resource Center at area code 631-608-5014, or visit their website and event calendar at www.liprc.org. Up next, Debra Caputo from Western Suffolk BOCES joins us to discuss mental health first aid. We'll be right back. Millions of Americans have been trained in some sort of medical first aid. But chances are, if a person is showing psychiatric pain, people are likely to walk away rather than have some tools to offer help. Debra Caputo is the Project Aware Coordinator for Western Suffolk and Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. She is Certified Mental Health First Aid Instructor at National Council for Behavioral Health. She's here today to tell us about mental health first aid. Debra, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Great. Tell us, what is mental health first aid?
So mental health first aid is the help that's provided to an individual that is either developing a mental health illness or a mental health challenge until professional help can either arrive or the mental health challenge is resolved.
Okay, so it's geared towards lay people. It's not geared towards professionals. It's geared towards anybody who maybe encounters somebody with a mental health problem that they begin to see.
Absolutely. Anyone can take the course to become trained in either mental health first aid or the other modules like youth mental health first aid, and they don't need to have any kind of qualifications in regard to mental health profession.
Are there some numbers you can share with us that show why mental health first aid is so important?
Well, mental health first aid is very important because it provides an opportunity for individuals to learn how to deal with a mental health crisis. Half of all of the youth have onset before age 14 of mental illness signs. In addition, 1 out of 5 individuals have had a mental health challenge or illness within the past given year. So those statistics really add to the fact that it's so important to have this training.
And why is there a mental health first aid for adults as compared to a mental health first aid course for youth?
Well, in the youth mental health first aid, you're dealing with adults that are going to take the course that are working with youth. And obviously we know that in youth, the adolescents, their behavior can be very varied. In adult mental health first aid, oftentimes there's already a diagnosis or possible pending diagnosis, and therefore the treatment is slightly different in regard to how you're going to care for the individual.
And how long is the training and how is it conducted?
So the training, both trainings are 8-hour. It's nationally recognized evidence-based program. It can be conducted in one 8-hour section, or it can be a training of 2 4-hours. And then sometimes we can vary depending on the work schedules for individuals. It's very interactive. We have activities, we have videos, we have a lot of engagement, we have scenarios that involve role playing. So not only are you increasing your mental health literacy when you take the course, but you're also being allowed to actually use the skills necessary within the course.
Okay, so you have an opportunity to practice some things while you're there.
Mm-hmm.
And I see you brought a little guy here that is part of the course.
Yeah, so that's Algie. Mental health first aid actually originated in Australia, and Algie represents the 5-step methods in regard to caring for somebody that's in a mental health crisis situation or dealing with a mental health illness. So it came over to the United States in 2008, and the National Council for Behavioral Health, the Maryland Department of Mental Health and Hygiene, and also Missouri Department of Mental Health joined forces to create both the adult and also the youth modules.
And what kind of response do you get from the people that take the class?
So over the course of a lot of the trainings that I've conducted, many of the individuals have a great response. We've actually gotten emails back saying that they utilize their skills in a daily life, whether it be in their family or their occupation or in the general community. They feel that the course covers the basic knowledge that everyone should be aware of and also really addresses the attitudes in regard to destigmatizing the attitudes of mental health illness in the community.
Can you give some examples of that, of how these courses address stigma?
So we talk about different terms that are used in society related to mental illness, and oftentimes when people are unaware and unknowledgeable about what a mental disorder looks like, they oftentimes will term it negatively. So we address the terms that should be used and that are appropriate.
Got an example?
An example is we do an activity where we actually have participants call out the different mental illness terms, and we address them as something that we would not want to be in society. We also talk about the language related to mental illness.
It's interesting because, I mean, for example, with diagnoses, a lot of people will say, you are a schizophrenic,
right.
or you know, and of course, a person is so much more than that.
Right. We always put the person first.
Right.
So it's a person with schizophrenia, or it's a person that's been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So we always are very sensitive to that, and sensitive to the people that are within the family and the community and the caregivers in regard to how we should use those terms.
And how often are the trainings offered, and how is it publicized?
So the National Council for Behavioral Health has a website. The website is www.mentalhealthfirstaid.org. And you can go on there and see by the town that you live in and the state and your zip code what the local courses are that are being offered. They also have icons for both the adult course and the youth course, so you can decide if you're an adult working with adults or interested in that, or if you're an adult working with youth.
Do you have any idea out of the trainings you've done about how many people have participated so far?
Well, there's different foundations that are supporting the program, which is wonderful. SAMHSA has under Project Aware, which is for the BOCES right here in Western Suffolk BOCES. We have funding that has actually just begun the trainings. So I've personally trained over 100 people in this area, and I was fortunate enough to also go to Newtown and train there, and also we work with New York City also. So the trainings, as far as how many are taking place, in New York, we actually have the lowest, one of the lowest percentages of individuals in our location trained. So we have...
Based on the population size, yeah.
Yes, so 0.039%. So we're hoping that bringing this program to Long Island will actually help increase that.
And I guess as trainers, you go through a bit, and are there qualifications for trainers?
So yes, so trainers have to actually be accepted by the National Council for Behavioral Health. We submit an application. You attend a 5-day intense training where you really go over all of the material that's covered, and then you're required to teach 3 courses each year to keep your certification.
Is there a phone number that people can reach you if they're interested in learning more about the training availability?
Sure, they can call Western Suffolk BOCES, the Student Support Services. That phone number is 631-595-6843.
That's great. And I wish you a great deal of luck with this. I think it's a wonderful course. I haven't had the opportunity to take it yet, but I hope to.
Well, I hope that you come to one of
I've
mine.
seen
That
overviews.
would be great.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
You're
because
always
I think
welcome.
it's a wonderful way of addressing stigma and helping people realize there are things they can do to address this.
Absolutely, that's the goal.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Up next, in our archive segment, we revisit the segment on the East End Gang Prevention Conference. Stay tuned.
They'll be fine, I hope.
What if you could prevent a young person from getting hurt or killed?
What should I do?
If you could turn back the clock and stop an underage drinking party from ever happening. Now you can. Pick up the phone and call 1-866-UNDER-21. It's your community, your call, and it's completely anonymous.
The 8th Annual East End Gang Prevention Conference is a forum designed to provide information on current trends and strategies geared toward preventing gang activity and gang violence. The dynamic and nationally recognized speaker, Milton Crea, was chosen as the keynote speaker to share his insight and expertise on this both prevalent and concerning subject matter.
About 9 years ago, a group of leaders out here who work in the youth development field, who are working with young people, started to hear more and more stories about gang involvement on the East End, and not necessarily some real high-end gang involvement, but kids making some really at-risk, dangerous choices for themselves. And
this committee that we're part of has been putting these conferences on the East End for about 8 years now.
So we brought a few of us together and we started to take a look at what's happening with our young people, what's happening with our adults in this community. We started to see some gang involvement, we started to see some gang graffiti happen, and we said it's time that we bring those folks together and let's get ahead of this and begin to do some real good education about it.
And it was something we felt was timely and necessary. And since our focus is prevention, it was a natural thing for us to want to get involved with.
So a group of social workers, counselors, youth agencies, law enforcement, and faith-based agencies, we came together and we put on the first conference. And what we found immediately was there was a need for it, and people asked us for more. And so now we've done about 8 conferences that we hold every year with attendance that ranges from 100 to 300 folks, and what we really want to do is get education to them on different programs. What are the current trends we're seeing? What are the current challenges we're faced when it comes to young people today? And how can we give people who work with young people, who work in communities, the best, most effective strategies to help develop healthy, positive young people, to help develop healthy programs in their communities, and begin to make a shift in the change of what we see happening in the trends with young people.
Stuff that goes on with gangs is also some stuff we see in the media. It's well publicized. Kids see it, they pick it up, and they sort of emulate it. And so our approach is we want to make sure, number one, that the folks who are working with kids, that the people who are raising kids in our community know what gang behavior is and what the indicators are, so that they can be aware and always sort of ready to recognize it, and so that they can kind of understand the difference between gang behavior and emulating gang behavior.
In highlighting today's conference, we've brought in a great keynote speaker, nationally renowned speaker. His name is Milton Korea, who's going to really challenge us as people who work within this industry. How are we really reaching young people?
He's interesting, he's funny, he keeps your attention, but I think the most important thing about him is that he relates his message to every person in the audience. Everybody, whether you're a young person or a parent or a teacher or a grandparent, his message resonates with everybody.
You know, it was really good to come and have a chance to go to schools here. I came here last year and just spoke at the Gang Awareness Conference, and came back this year and had a chance to go and speak in some of the schools just to talk to the kids and get the kids to think not only about gangs, and talk about gangs at the schools, talk about the drug problem, and get them to understand, because one of the mistakes I think we've made over the years is whenever we talk to kids about drugs and alcohol, we basically talked about one thing, and that is drunk driving crashes. And understand those are terrible and they're awful and all that, but there are other things that are connected to drugs and alcohol that we have to start talking about.
So today's conference, we're focusing on a couple of different things. One is, what are the current trends in drug use, and how does that connect to gangs?
What we're starting to see is a lot of gangs are moving away from what we would call the violent street crime, like the drug dealing, like the armed robbery and that kind of thing, and they're moving towards what we would call white collar or cyber crime.
We're also doing some workshops on mentoring and talking with some folks who are actively right now working with some youth reentry programs.
For kids in America today, number 1 cause of death of boys 12 to 19 is drug and alcohol related accidents. Number 2 is murder. Number 3 is suicide. Well, guess what? Most suicides, the person who attempts suicide is under influence of alcohol. Most murders, alcohol or drugs are involved in that. So we got to talk about it.
So there's a definite connection to be made between gang activity and drug use and sellers and buyers. And what's more important is taking a look at the risk factors that are associated. The risk factors that are associated for joining a gang are very much the same risk factors that are connected to drug and alcohol use.
And so what I try to do with kids is do connected issues tied to this, whether it's sexual assault, whether it's domestic violence. I mean, so many kids I meet have people in their families they've watched go back and forth to jail, mostly tied to drugs and alcohol. And I try to get kids to see that and get them to understand that since you see this in your world, not something you see on TV, but you see this with people in your family, then you got to make some adjustments to how you live your life so that you won't get caught up in that.
And when we talk about young people, what do young people want? They want to belong to a group. And you talk to any young person anywhere, and that's what they're going to tell you. Gangs offer young people exactly what they're looking for. There's money involved, there's an excitement involved, there's a risk factor involved, but the sense of belonging is involved.
And so I think it's important for schools, important for parents, important for the community to find a way to let all kids feel included.
Very much the same when we talk about drugs and alcohol, all the same things that are very attractive about it. There's a risk factor involved, you're part of a larger group that's engaged in a behavior, you have the sense of belonging, and so all those same mechanisms go hand in hand. So whether it's behaviorally or whether it's the combination of how gangs relate to drugs and alcohol, it's all interconnected, and our young people look for those different avenues, unfortunately, to find their place in the world.
Every school that I went to here in the Long Island area, at the end I asked the kids a series of questions. I asked them, how many have someone in your family who has gotten a divorce because of drugs or alcohol? Then I said, how many have someone in your family who's lost a job because of drugs or alcohol? How many have someone who's gone to jail because of drugs or alcohol? And then finally, how many have someone in your family who's died because of either drugs, alcohol, or gangs? And when I asked those questions, I then have all those kids stand up who said yes. At every school we went to, when I had the final tally of the kids standing up, if they had one of those things in their family, it was over 90% of the kids at every school who stood up. So that says that this stuff is here and in their families.
It's difficult sometimes to think about what can the average person do to make a difference. If you're not in this field, if you're not teaching, what can you do? But I want to talk clearly about things you can do as individuals. One of those simple things is mentor a young person.
What we have to look at as parents, what we have to look at as school people, as people in the community, is that those gangs then may be looking for a different kind of kid. They aren't looking for the street tough who can be on the street corner selling dope anymore. But a lot of the gangs are looking for kids who have computer savvy. They're looking for kids who are bright. They're looking for kids who have internet savvy. You know, a lot of the marketing now of the gangs is done through the internet.
The truth is, there's a lot of young people who really need some good, solid adult mentors out there.
Research that we've done in talking with kids, that there's a few parenting strategies that are really simple but very effective. They are to set boundaries, set limits for your kids and make sure that they know what they are. The second one is to enforce those boundaries when they've been exceeded. You know, with your kids, if you told your kid not to do something and they do it, then there needs to be a consequence. The third is to know who your children's friends are, to ask them where they're going when they go out. And the fifth one is to have a family dinner as often as you can.
I just try to get kids to look at this in terms of their family and how has this stuff really impacted their family over the years.
This conference and the feedback we've received over the years has really told us that we've done our job in getting people to become aware.
I think the average person can help a lot by basically just being aware.
We'd like to thank Mr. Crea and the participants involved at this conference. For information about future conferences, contact the Prevention Resource Center at area code 631-608-5014. We'd like to thank our viewers for tuning in to Something of Substance. Our video magazine is a public resource, and we're eager to hear your feedback as well as any suggestions you may have for future show topics. For all inquiries and concerns, please contact me at art.flesher@suffolkcountynY.gov. I'm your host, Art Flesher. Join us again next month for more of Something of Substance.